Welcome to the Herald Democrat Sports Podcast. I am the sports editor at the Herald Democrat, Jason Della, Rosa, and welcome to Week 10 of the high school football season. Next up in District 9-3A Division 2, we have a key matchup as Whitewright travels to Bells. It's big on both sides. First, we'll start with Whitewright, which is coming off a 41-34 loss against rival Leonard. They are 4-4 and 1-3. While Bells won 33-14 against Blue Ridge, so they come in at 5-3 and 4-0. To shake out the district standings, Bells is in first place with that 4-0 record. You have Leonard at 3-2. You have Blue Ridge and Cooper at 2-2. You have Chisholm at 2-3. Whitewright at 1-3, and they're tied with Prairieland. So it's a messy district after Bells. Bells clinched their playoff spot with the victory last week. This is the sixth straight year that the Panthers have made it to the playoffs. That's a school record. And if they win this week, they will clinch the district championship outright because everybody has 2 losses behind them. And that would be the 7th overall district title for Bells and their first since 1996. So Panthers are looking to get that squared away. They can lock themselves into the top seed. Whitewright would be eliminated from the playoffs with a loss and a Cooper win. So if Whitewright loses, they would technically still have a shot. It'd be very slim, but they would have a shot. But if Cooper wins and they are playing Leonard, then that would eliminate the Tigers. So you have a situation where Bells stands in the way of Whitewright having to basically where it has to win out after losing to Leonard last week. But they do have that win against Cooper, so that could potentially be a tiebreaker. Again, this is another messy district. You have a situation where Whitewright is looking to tie Cooper for the 4th spot and potentially get in on the tiebreaker. But if Whitewright's in a really bad spot if they lose this game. But again, overall for the season, under first-year head coach Kevin Wiggins, you have a team that had only won 4 games the previous 2 years combined, and they're sitting at 4-4. They do have a chance to maybe get to a 500 record, which would be a really good step in the right direction. And like I said, this is a district where everybody besides Bells has at least 2 losses, so you're right in the thick of it. You get 1 win, and you have a chance. In the shootout last week against Leonard, it was pretty close. Leonard was able to jump up early. They were up 19-6 at halftime. And then Leonard was able to kind of they got a couple touchdowns early in the 4th quarter, and then Leonard was able to score late on a late pass, and that ended up being the difference to kind of come back against Whitewright. Dylan Cordell had 14 carries for 128 yards. And 3 touchdowns to lead the Tigers. I guess I have to say Whitewright because they're both Tigers. To lead Whitewright in rushing. And Trevor McCartney had 4 catches for 106 yards and a pair of touchdown passes for Marshall Mangrum. So should be an interesting game. Bells has really got things going. They get off to the slow start. They were 1-3, trying to adjust to new coach Dale West's offense. But they've been rolling in district play. Both offensively and defensively, they've been putting up points, and they've also been holding people down. Last week was no exception. In that 33-14 victory over Blue Ridge, they ran for another 300. I think it was 287 yards, or 370 yards. It's another big game on the ground. Wrangler Priest led the way. He had 26 carries for 144 yards and a touchdown. Caden Pyle had 2 carries for 91 yards and a touchdown. Priest also caught a touchdown pass, and he also threw a touchdown pass. His TD throw went to Keaton High, and Blake Rowland had the touchdown pass to Priest. He also had one to Tanner Carter. So it was a good mix of passing and rushing in that one. And that was a game where Bells was up, 27-0 in the middle of the 3rd quarter. They were able to kind of cruise from there. So they're in a good spot, and they're looking to wrap up that top spot for the playoffs. Moving on to the next game in District 5-2A. This is another key game as we come down the home stretch. Collinsville is at Celeste. This is a big game because you have Collinsville sitting at 3-5 and 0-2, and Celeste is 2-7 and 1-2. This is a situation where Collinsville is coming off their bye. It was a much needed bye. Pirates have been scuffling about the last month or so it came at the right time for them. And Celeste was able to get a 14-6 victory over Tom Bean. So we have a very muddled playoff picture in this district. Valley View is in first place. They are 3-0 and they have clinched a playoff spot. But everybody else is still in the running. You have Tom Bean and Trenton, which we'll get to in a minute. They are both 1-1. And then we have Celeste at 1-2. And Collinsville is at 0-2. This is a monster game for Collinsville. Collinsville would be eliminated from the playoffs with a loss and a Trenton win over Tom Bean. So while the Pirates are playing Celeste, they are rooting for Tom Bean to beat Trenton because that's who Collinsville finishes with. They finish with Trenton, and they need to have that. They'll potentially need to win that game to get into the playoffs. Celeste is in a good spot to make the playoffs if they get a win. But again, if they lose, we're looking at the Tom Bean Trenton loser, Celeste and Collinsville all sitting tied at 1-2 for the last playoff spot, or for two of the last. So it's just a mess right now for how things are shaking out in that district. We'll know a lot more after this week. Like I said, if Celeste wins, that would basically clinch it for them. And the winner of the Trenton Tom Bean game, which we'll get to here in a second, that puts them in a really good spot as well. But Collinsville is basically facing must win this week if they don't want to have their final game turn into essentially a de facto playoff game because of the ramifications around the rest of the district. And like we mentioned, the other game in this district is Tom Bean at Trenton. Tom Bean comes in at 3-5 and 1-1 after that 14-6 loss against Celeste. And Trenton is 4-3 and 1-1 after it lost 35-0 against Valley View last week as well. The winner will clinch a playoff spot here. So there's a lot on the line. Tom Bean could clinch a playoff spot if they lose and Collinsville loses to Celeste. So we have, like I said, we have a lot of cross pollination in terms of if this team does this in this game and that team does that in that game. But that's really what you need to know about Tom Bean. Win and they're in. Lose and Collinsville loses to Celeste and they would also be in. The Tomcats are, if they do get in this week or potentially next week, they're seeking back-to-back playoff appearances for the first time since 2003 and 2004. And Trenton is having their best season since they restarted football in 2012. Like we mentioned, they are 4-3 overall. Before that, they had won 3 games both last year and in 2015. And because of the long gap in their history, if they do win one more game, the last time they won 5 games in an 11-man season was in 1933. So this is by far the best success that Trenton has had. And like I said, they're in a position to clinch a playoff spot. And so both teams have plenty to play for this week. Tom Bean took a step back after winning the district opener. I think maybe field conditions may have had something to do with that. Everybody was dealing with the rain and the bad fields last Friday. But hopefully we'll see the Tomcats get back on track, and like we said, they could clinch a playoff spot with a win. And the last game on the schedule is Tioga at Cumbie in District 9-2A, Division 2. Tioga is 3-5 and 1-1 after losing 50-6 against Munster, and Cumbie had the district bye. They come in at 5-3 and 0-1, and this is a district like we've mentioned basically throughout the season. Everybody in the playoffs had already clinched a playoff spot, everybody in the district had clinched a playoff spot because there are only 4 teams in the district. And the game last week between Tioga and Munster was essentially to see who would get the number 1 seed, because Munster is now sitting at 2-0, Tioga is sitting at 1-1, Cumbie is at 0-1, and Era is also at 0-1. And while Tioga is playing Cumbie this week, Era is playing Munster. If I had to guess, which I don't think it's a real big guess, you can assume Munster is going to win that game, and Munster would officially lock up the top spot in the standings. And if that does happen, then the question is going to be about this matchup between Tioga and Cumbie. Who gets the second seed for the playoffs? Cumbie still has to play Era. So if Cumbie were to win this game and then beat Era, they would move into the second seed, and Tioga would be third. So this is a key game for Tioga in terms of seeding. Like I said, they're coming off the lopsided loss against Munster. They avoided the shutout with a 31-yard touchdown pass from Caleb McKinney to Marshall Lease in the fourth quarter. But they had a little over 100 yards. Munster, Munster's really good. They're 7-2 on the season, and so there's no shame in losing to them. But this is a game where if they can bounce back, and also because this is Tioga's last game, they have the district bye next week, so you want to go potentially into the playoffs on a good note, and like I said, locking up the second seed with a win, and that would go a long way towards potentially getting a more favorable matchup when the brackets come out in 2 weeks. So that's where the Bulldogs stand. Like I said, and Cumbie has a lot to play for too. Second place is better than third. They were the second seed last year. And like I said, Tioga was the fourth seed last year. So to make a jump from fourth place to second place and go from 4 wins in the regular season to just the one that Tioga had last year in their first year, moving up to 11-man football, that's a nice improvement for the Bulldogs as well. So that's a look at the Week 10 action that we're going to be getting into, and a look back at Week 9. Should be interesting to see. We've got several key games and how things are going to shake out going into the last week of the season. Stay warm this week. Looks like we're having our first really cold weather. I don't know if you would count last week as cold. It was more rainy than cold. So stay warm this Friday night, and we'll talk to you next week.